For the last 20 years. I've done a variety of communities here in East Ventura. I've done the Citrus Swamp community, which I live in. I've done the Ventura collection and the Orchard collection, and then I was recently involved in the Haley Point community in Midtown, which we ultimately sold to Katie. But total responsible conservatively, I would say I probably generated close to $250 million in additional property tax assessments, which probably today probably is close to $2.5 million in additional property tax revenue that the city is receiving every year for that. So that's kind of a quick bio of who I am, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Bill McReynolds. Now, a council member, Lori Brown, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. So as you know, I'm your incumbent for District 6. I'm a homebody. I've come from the city of Ventura. I grew up riding my bike, playing in Break Vista Park, climbing trees. I was a tomboy. I hated dresses, and I wanted to be outside all day long. Back then, you could do that. My father and my mother purchased that home for $20,000. They paid that home off. They worked full time. My mother put herself through college at Ventura College and became a registered nurse. My dad was an Air Force Vietnam veteran. He used his GI Bill to purchase that home and that track, and they just started a family. And I went to school at Portola, Anacapa, Buena, Go Bulldogs, and I just loved my childhood growing up here. Once I went to college, I went to Ventura College and got my Associates in Bilingual Studies, and then I got my bachelor's at CLU in Communication Journalism, and then I went on to get my master's in Public Policy because I knew I wanted to write legislation. I didn't know how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, and then I had the opportunity to run for office. I started my career working in redevelopment as a project management lead, so I was in charge of $500,000 projects. It was a facade and paint improvement program within the business district in the city of Oxnard. And so I was in charge of managing those projects. So I have over about 20 years experience in public budgeting, in addition to the experience while I've been on council. In the year 2020, that was one of the hardest and most difficult budget cycles the city's ever seen, and the whole country really. It was such a tumultuous year. And I was able to save the city $400,000 in merchant services fees during an $11 million budget shortfall. So that's a little bit about me. I raised my kids here. They went to all local schools. I raised my 3 boys. Their names are Joseph, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. I call them my 3 prophets. And unfortunately, because of the affordable housing crisis that we're in, I had to send them all away to start their careers, to start their lives. And I don't want that for the future, for the Ventura's future children. I want them to be able to graduate, come back home, and live and grow up here, and raise their families here as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Lori Brown. Jim Duran next. Jim, tell us about yourself, please.
Well, first of all, thank you, Spencer, Connect Church, and all of you that are here. It's an honor to be before you. I was born actually at the Ojai Hospital because for whatever reason they couldn't get to the Ventura Hospital, and ended up growing up on the Avenue on Sunnyway Drive. Lived here my whole life. I lived as far west as Sunnyway Drive, as far east as Winford Avenue, and was in the District 6, which wasn't districts back then, growing up from 1st grade to 5th grade, and then again in the Bird Track, and then back to where I live currently. So I know the city. I've been in the city for my whole life. Matter of fact, 62 years today I've been in the city. Thank you so much. And so, like, I understand the city. I understand the great things, the things that need improvement. I've been married to my wife Pam for 33 years. We have 6 children from ages 31 all the way to 16. So we still have a daughter in high school at Ventura High School. The fourth grandchild was due today, but it hasn't come out yet. She hasn't even gone to the hospital yet. So I was hoping to share a birthday with our new grandbaby. So my kids are all here. Every Sunday we meet for family dinner. The whole family comes over. We did this before Blue Bloods, I want to tell you. We did this before that. And family is important to me. And I want my children to be able to live here because they love this place. And so being able to find ways to make sure that they can stay. I actually pastor a church in Ventura called the River Community Church. I'm the executive director for City Center Transitional Living and Tender Life Maternity Home. City Center is a place for families who are homeless with children under 12. And I would just tell you in the last 7.5 years, we've been able to help. Am I out of time?
No, you're going.
30 seconds, everybody.
Okay. We've been able to help 300 people get into permanent housing without government funding, and either one of our projects do not have government funding. So why am I a good candidate? That's one reason. I've also been with the Ventura Chamber of Commerce for 20 years, was their board chair, and served on their board of directors for 9 years. And so I understand business, and all of that matters when you're becoming part of City Council. So Jim Duran, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Steph Carver's next. Now that you know everybody, Steph, tell us about
Happy birthday,
yourself.
Jim. Thanks, Spencer. Thanks, Spence, and everyone here for coming and for having me. I'm Steph Carva. I am very jealous of the people who were born in Ventura. If I had control over that, I genuinely would want to be born here. My parents are both from Austria, and they immigrated to the United States in 1980 to New York, and that's where my brothers and I were born. And since then, in 2007, we manifest destiny to California, and I got my degrees in hydrology and environmental science up at UC Santa Barbara. And shortly after that, actually almost immediately after I finished my master's degree, I was hired and recruited to work at Patagonia. So I have been in Ventura ever since 2016, and have absolutely fallen in love with the town. My whole family has followed my backyard connects into my mom's backyard. My 2 brothers are here, and I fully intend to spend the rest of my life here. It is not only the weather, which so many people I talk to love, it is the community, the neighbors. Montalvo specifically, I adore. And I feel like especially the last 2 years through COVID and the pandemic shutdown, I mean, my neighbors, their kids have jumped the fence, they come into my yard, they come to my garage. I feel like every day they're in my house some way or another. And one of the reasons I decided to run, I mean, I've been a poll worker for 1.5 years. I've been on the General Plan Advisory Committee with Lori and Bill. And that's been amazing to vision out the future of Ventura, but I am not one to just dream. I want to get it done. And I want to get it done for not only myself and my family, but for my neighbors' kids. And where I live on Crowley, we are half a mile from Montalvo Hill Elementary. We're a quarter mile from my bus stop in the Little League. And none of us can get to those areas on sidewalks. And it is so disappointing to see my neighbors' kids live in somewhere in a neighborhood that isn't built or designed for them. And so not only am I doing this for them, I'm doing this for the future generation of Ventura. And yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so proud.
For that introduction there.
Enter to Bluetooth.
Something I forgot to mention during my little intro was during our questions, let's keep it to probably 60 seconds. And if you see me in the back, raise my hand. That means we went over 90 seconds to try to wrap it up at that moment. So, and the way we're going to format it is with 5 people here, we're going to ask the same question to all 5 candidates and then just go down the line, making each person go first. So since Jim introduced himself first, we're going to have Bill answer the first question first, and then Lori would have question number 2. And so we'll go for 60 seconds to 90 seconds per answer. Thank you so much. Mr. Spence?
Julie, did you want to ask your question?
I have a question specifically for Bill in there too.
Okay.
Okay. Well, since he's holding the mic, anyways, East End infrastructure. There have been multiple apartment units, housing units, all kinds of building that's happening on the East End, and now there are more units going in on Johnson Drive. And yet I see nothing changing on 118, and the Johnson Drive and ramp is the only entrance for East Ventura onto the 101. And it can be a nightmare in both places. So I'm wondering what plans, what's your idea of what can be done now that all this housing is built to help the flow of traffic?
Thank you very much for that question. Obviously, the importance there of particularly the 101 and the 118 is they're under a different jurisdiction. They're under Caltrans jurisdiction. So what we, I'm sorry, couldn't hear me. Again, do I need to start over? Oh, is that those are under different jurisdictions. They're not under the city control. They're under Caltrans obligations. So I agree with you 100% that Johnson Drive and the 118 are both severely congested. I've taken the 118 in the morning, going what I'm going to call south. We need to expand it. There's an opportunity there that we can expand it. We need to start working with our state legislatures, either Assemblymember Bennett or State Senator Monique Lamone, to get those looked at. There was money actually allocated previously for the Johnson improvements for Johnson Drive, and the city actually didn't work well with Caltrans, and that funds got moved over to Victoria, and that's why Victoria works. So my answer is we need to work with our state legislatures to identify those issues and start getting those worked on. And particularly if we're going to get Johnson connected to Olivas, there's another opportunity for us to start working on those with those state legislators.
But would that be a priority? I mean, you can say we need to do it, but is it a priority?
Is it a priority for the citizens of Ventura? Absolutely.
No, for the city council, for you as a council member.
Yes, it would be a priority working on infrastructure, particularly those two particular items do need to get addressed. It's obviously working with our partners at the state to get them to do it on it. But we need to put the pressure on them. I mean, there are a variety of things that we need to do with the state beyond just the 118 and the 101 at Johnson.
Thank you very much, Bill. Councilmember Lori Brown, your thoughts on that question, please?
Thank you for that question. So the question is two-part. Is it a priority, and do I believe that the infrastructure is needed? I do believe the infrastructure is needed. I want to say that a lot of times when it comes to infrastructure, we're spinning 10 plates at the same time. Because although traffic mitigation and traffic studies are necessary to make sure that we understand exactly what the impacts are going to be to the community, there's a couple of different funding mechanisms. He mentioned one of them, which is Caltrans controls a certain portion of it. So we can talk to them as much as we want if they don't want to do a project, or if they're not ready to do anything in our area, if they don't see it as a priority in relation to other cities that are larger with larger populations, then we can yell and we can be that squeaky wheel. We can keep being the squeaky wheel. As far as a priority, it is a priority, but it's a priority that's along with probably 10 other priorities, and that's for specifically with the streets, trees, and sidewalks. So we have sidewalks that are a hazard, we have streets that need to be resurfaced, and we have trees that are just overgrown. And so while I've been on council, one of my major priorities has been streets, trees, and sidewalks. Understanding that trees are funded by the gas tax, and that gas tax, we only get that money back for that. We receive the money, goes to the state, to the county, they all get their cut. By the time it comes back to us, we get it twice a year. So we can't do any projects built out until we get that money. Then once we get the money, there's a street management plan that determines when that can happen. And then when you're talking about water, that's infrastructure, because a lot of people are saying, okay, there's building everywhere, and you mentioned the new properties that are being built. And some people may not understand that those properties were entitled 15 years ago. And you're seeing them all being built all right now because I don't know why. It's happening all at the same time, and it makes it look like that this council right now approved all these projects and are building them all at the same time. It's not just on the east side, it's also in Midtown and on the west side. So I think my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lori Brown. Jim Duran, your thoughts?
I think that's a great question, and that whole area is absolutely a priority. Here we have an incredible city, and when you come into it, this is what you run into. That traffic jam, just the area that's so depressed right now, we need work there, right? So, and I agree with what they're saying in regards to Caltrans being a part of that, and that whole thing. I was talking to somebody not too long ago, and I was talking about the on-ramp heading southbound. And, you know, how many times has a truck got caught there, right? And so I said, you know, this is the thing we need to fix. And he said, well, Jim, that would probably take you like 20 years. And I said, I sure hope not, but at least we should start. At least we should get the ball rolling. Coming off the freeway, I don't know how long it would take Caltrans to do anything, but there's some simple things you could do coming off the freeway, like not allowing them to turn left on the frontage road and just coming straight out, and maybe not having them be able to get on the freeway that way. So you're coming on one way, you're coming off one way, and being able to go through town a little bit isn't going to kill anybody, Victoria, whatever the case is. But that would, I know, Mr. Abbey calls it demolition derby, because it's like, man, you're just like, which way do I go? And so priority, absolutely. That whole area is a priority for me. And I'll do whatever we can do to make sure that gets attention immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Duran. And now, Steph Carver, your thoughts on the Johnson Drive exit, entrance, stop and go.
Thanks, Spencer. Transportation is absolutely 100% my priority. It is so important to think about, especially in the context of things like the general plan. It's not enough to just look at the zones, the zoning kind of lots themselves and rezoning them. You have to think about how those new developments, all of the people that are going to move in, how they're going to get around to the grocery stores, to work, around town. And it's one thing for the city to have an active transportation plan. I myself don't have a car. I have a little scooter, an e-bike, and carpooling. But the vast majority, 99% of people have a car, and we need to have. I joke, I call it an inactive transportation plan. We have to have a plan specific to the street surfaces and the roads and the off ramps around town. For every single district in the city, so we can plan for those specifically. And to the point of the gas tax, I think the city needs to start thinking now about the fact that in 2035, gas cars are no longer going to be allowed to be sold. New cars won't be allowed to be sold in California, and we should start expecting to see less gas tax coming into cities, knowing the electrification that's happening in the transportation sector. And so I'm particularly interested in understanding or exploring how the city can diversify its portfolio to fund these projects, knowing that Phil Nelson in the Public Works Department is significantly underfunded and under-budgeted on transportation projects specifically. I have suggestions in terms of, I think we should create a special fund specifically for transportation. Santa Barbara has a 2% higher transient occupancy tax on short-term rentals that go towards a special fund for Santa Barbara. It goes towards water and creeks. I think we could raise our TOT tax by 1 or 2% and have that specifically go towards transportation. Having that in addition to Measure O, in addition to the gas tax, I think could get us to the 21st century and into a city that has streets, sidewalks, trees, all of the things that we need, and have them soon.
Thank you very much, Steph Carver. The next question is going to go to Councilmember Lori Brown. And
Hold on one more time, Mr. Rundell, the final question.
oh my goodness, I didn't take the lap around. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Jim. It's your turn on Johnson Drive. My apologies.
No problem. which is completely unacceptable. So an immediate help, an immediate alleviation, I guess, for the issue of backlit traffic is better coordination of the traffic lights, with moving into looking at expanding the lanes and expanding the traffic so it can flow better and move in a more better fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Now we will go to Council Member Lori Brown, and the question here is about Airbnbs.
Yeah.
What is the statute regarding Airbnbs in residential areas? This questionnaire says they have one on Balboa, and they don't think that it's correct, if you will. So what do you think about Airbnbs and the way they invade neighborhoods?
So we don't currently, the city of Ventura, have an Airbnb or STVR, which is short-term vacation rental ordinance. We're in the process of drafting that as we speak. As a matter of fact, at our last council meeting, we were supposed to address that issue and have a moratorium, which just was going to say no new STVRs in Pierpont, because that's where the highest concentration of the STVRs are right now, until we brought a policy back, say in January, February. However, that came with some controversy, so we decided not to have that item, I guess. It got pulled. But my position on STVRs and Airbnbs is a little bit biased, I would have to say, because of what happened with my son. So in my purview, when Airbnbs come into a community, I think they have a little bit of responsibility to maintain safety, to make sure that they're good neighbors, make sure that there's appropriate security, and that the tenants that are staying in those STVRs are respectful, and that they're not being a nuisance, if you will, to their neighbors in the community. That in addition to that, I think a lot of the things that's been discussed about making sure that or trying to make sure that there's only a certain percentage of STVRs on each given street, so that one street isn't all bought up and the whole entire street is STVRs. And again, as I mentioned, making sure they contribute to security surrounding those properties. Is that my time? Or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you very much. Councilmember Lori Brown. Jim Duran, you're next on Airbnbs.
Well, the thing is that right now we only have 200 we have 200 short-term vacation rentals in the whole city of Ventura. The challenge is that we have ones that aren't licensed, and that's what needs to get regulated. Those, we need, I've talked to people that are owners of these properties, and they said, Jim, we would be willing to pay a higher tax than 10%, so we could put that money in a fund to have these things regulated, to have somebody actually go out and make sure that the bad owners aren't in our city. And I think that's what we need to focus on. Not so much, you can only have a certain amount on a certain block, because if you've ever rented an Airbnb, they vet you. You have to give them all your information. They check you out, and so that's not the issue. The issue is we're losing tax revenue. We're losing credibility because we have owners out there that aren't licensed, and and it's very easy to check. If you go to an Airbnb and you look in Ventura and you notice they don't have a license down there, easy check. But we need somebody to regulate that, and I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Jim. Steph Carver, you're next.
Yeah, I agree. We need to draft an ordinance specifically around Airbnbs that enforces them and ensures that we're getting revenue from them, but we should not have a moratorium. I mean, if anything, I feel like it's a testament to how great Ventura is to have Airbnbs here. And honestly, hotels are exclusive to folks who have, primarily can be exclusive to folks who have pets, who have dogs, who have 2 or 3 children, and they don't want to put them in separate rooms. And so having an Airbnb is inclusive and speaks to folks. I mean, just on Monday, someone was talking about how, they used to live in Ventura decades ago, and they moved away to the Central Valley, and they wanted to come back and reconnect to the town that they grew up in, and they wanted to stay in an Airbnb with their group of friends. So But to Lori and Jim's point, we have to have an ordinance and the enforcement along with that, parallel with that, to make sure that not only are they safe, are they regulated, but that we're getting, it's lost revenue, and we need to make sure that we're getting that from them.
Jim Rundle, please. Airbnbs.
There's nothing inherently wrong with Airbnbs or short-term vacation rentals in and of itself, but there is a need to regulate it and to have guidelines and rules and ordinances that the owners know that are in place, so that when they have the renters come, they can have the renters sign contracts. Many other cities do this, especially out in the Palm Springs area. They regulate their Airbnbs and short-term rentals very strictly. And if these regulations or ordinances are violated, they face severe fines. And then the individuals who are renting are essentially barred from renting again. There's only so much the owners can do. But if the owners know the regulations and the guidelines and the ordinances, and they relay those to their possible renters, they can then have a map, a guideline to go by, and the renters can know ahead of time what is allowed and what's not allowed. And then I agree, there's also that important aspect of the tax revenue. And until the city passes an ordinance, council, in regards to that, there won't be any tax revenue. That's why it really is it's an important ordinance that the city needs to take up and pass as soon as possible. And if I'm elected, it'll be one of the top things that I push to get done.
Thank you, Jim Rundle. Bill McReynolds, final answer on this question on Airbnbs.
I think everything's basically been said about it. I mean, what we need is we need enforcement of it. If we have somebody on Balboa that's not following the rules, we need to have the rules in place. We need to have strict enforcement. One time it's a fine, second time it's a bigger fine, third time you lose your license. So those are the kind of programs that we need to adopt here regarding short-term vacation rentals. Because the good players, they want to play by the rules, and the bad players coming up with, well, first off, we have to come up with the rules, which we haven't. But once we have that, we need to strictly enforce those rules, because the folks playing by the rules don't want the people that aren't playing by the rules in business. So, thank you.
And thank you, Bill. Next question, we'll start with Jim Duran. Why would the current council rather go with a bond for a new paramedic engine and staffing rather than use available funds?
Well, I think that would be an easy answer. There's no available funds, right? Here's the thing though, that we need when you're talking about fire, you're talking about our departments they've been lacking for quite some time. So here we are, 10 years, and we haven't had any kind of remodel, nothing done in any of anything. And all the fire stations today, as an example, have roundabouts that you can pull in and pull out. We don't have any of that. 25 years. Just recently, just this last 2 years, because of Jim Friedman, there was a couple more staffing on it, hired on that. So here we are, 25 years later, same staffing, double the calls. There's been a great 5-year plan that's been put together that is amazing if we stick to that. But if there's no funds, then we obviously need to go to the bond. And we need to really upgrade our fire department. There's just things that they need that we really need to get done, so.
Thank you, Jim. And Steph Barba, please, your thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I think a bond is one way to fund that project. And I think similar to Measure E and Bond Measure E, like bonds historically have not been used to fund projects in the city. And I think in the context of both education and the fire department, they are necessary and valuable venues for getting additional revenue for their support. And so for that reason, I feel like it's something that that we need. I mean, if you look at least in the education system and for Measure E, Ventura, of all of the cities in Ventura County, has the lowest amount of bond dollars per student in the whole county. And so it's the same for fire departments. And so it's just one solution that we can use for the various public services, essential public services that we have in the city.
I'm going to ask the question again for Jim Rundle. As offered by one of the members of our audience, why would the current council rather go with a bond for a new paramedic engine and staffing rather than use available funds? Jim?
I think the reason they want to go for the bond instead of using available funds is so that they don't have to take money from where they want it to go. And they haven't wanted it to go to public safety. One thing I forgot to tell you, I was a paid call firefighter for the Orange County Fire Authority for 14 years. I went from paid call firefighter to engineer to reserve officer. I went to monthly reserve officer meetings with the current chief at that time, Chip Braylor. Having adequate staffing for public safety, fire, and police is absolutely critical to any city's well-being and growth and development. And fortunately, the city of Ventura has not done that. The call volume 20 years ago was approximately 6,000 medical aids a year, 911 response calls for the fire department. Today, it's over 17,000, more, almost triple. The staffing 20 years ago was at 82 personnel, today it's at 77. That's not acceptable. That staffing should be at 85. That medic engine should have been approved by the city council, period. The city has funds, it has money that it could have allocated for that. The other thing I want you folks to know is that for the most part, I'm not in favor of bonds. The problem with bonds is that you're gonna end up paying 3 times the amount that the bond was originally for when it's paid for and done. That's settling the next generations with all that debt. One thing the fire authority did when I was there, they had what were called patrol units. These patrol units needed CAF systems, compressed air foam systems, to be able to fight wildland fires as they're approaching homes. The OCFA put in for a federal grant. They got a $10 million federal grant back in the early 2000s for these CAF systems. We can do the same thing here. I know that the fire department wants a training tower. And I've thought that, hey, in addition to a training tower and training facility, we make it a law enforcement training facility as well, so that fire and police can both use it. $40, $50 million, whatever it costs, to have the city put up what it can put up, and then go for that federal grant. And as we all know, the federal government has plenty of money, and they want to give it out, so let's utilize that. Thank you.
Bill McReynolds, your thoughts on this question, please.
So bonding is kind of an interesting topic there, because the city has a maximum bonding capacity. So one of the first things that I would do is have a study session with the city council to understand what is our available bonding capacity. Because there's a lot of competing things that we would like to use, for a bond. So you have to pledge an asset if you put up a bond. So you're gonna have to pledge a golf course, you're gonna have to pledge City Hall, you're gonna have to pledge a park or something like that. There's an asset pledge behind that if there's a default on the bond. So the first thing we need to do is we need to understand what is our bonding capacity based on what asset we might be willing to pledge before we start deciding on it. I agree with Jim that we really probably need to look at grants, and FEMA grants before we start going down that path. And if we go down that path, I do agree that fire, police, public service are core city services that should probably be looked at first. But there are a lot of other needs that we might be able to bond for long-term before we start doing a fire bond. So again, my answer would be, I think we first have to understand our bonding capacity and then decide how we want to use it after we pursue the grants that are probably available out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill McReynolds. And the last look at this question is Council Member Lori Brown.
Thank you. This is kind of a loaded question, so I took notes. So with bonds, part of the reason is the fire personnel comes with pensions, very large ones. Right now, the state of California, CalPERS, has unfunded pension liabilities, and every year that the amount that the city is required to pay towards those pensions increases in the millions. Now, we have a plan to make sure that's covered, but we have to be very careful that whenever we bring on more personnel, that we have increased funding in order to make sure those pensions would be covered in the future. So if we take that burden onto the general fund directly without having anything else in place to help protect the city's risk. So the other thing is that we have to remain in good standing with those insurance companies that balance, I forget the exact term, but if we don't remain in good standing, they won't cover our risk. And so we have to, we have so much wiggle room that we have to stay in between to make sure that we stay financially and fiscally sound. I just want to also say that I was endorsed by the fire department because I have been fighting for our fire family for the entire time that I've been on council. I've been leading that narrative, and it was me and me alone that was leading that narrative, but with support of my colleagues, thankfully. And Measure O, I'm going to speak a little bit about that. Measure O was brought to you guys to vote for as a community with the idea that it would pay for our first responders. Unfortunately, that money has went to other places. But one of the things about Measure O is it's great for one-time funding, not personnel funding where it's every year the same people. And so the thing becomes we need to create more increased revenues as opposed to just, so anyway, my time's almost up, so I'm getting flustered, but the bonds make it where we can take on that risk without it affecting our budget and not affecting our standing with the insurance companies. And the last thing I'm going to say is we had a fire study that was headed up by a consultant who was a firefighter. We adopted and approved a fire strategic plan. We approved and voted for minimum staffing on a 5-year plan with the fire department, help replace apparatus, and to get their fire buildings up to code, because as it stands right now, they were not up to code. So we've done a lot for the fire department, and I will continue to advocate for them if reelected.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lori Brown. Brad, you would like to ask your question?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. So I'm in the commercial space for real estate, and we have what I call a jobs housing challenge. And part of the reason our traffic is so bad is everybody leaves and goes somewhere else to work. And what I see around Ventura is we don't have enough normal jobs, let alone higher paying jobs. So one of the things that limits that, I believe, is the net zero fee, the way it's structured. And part of that net zero fee, it goes after commercial development very heavy, and also goes after residential development as a fee to pay for our water, which is necessary. But would you, as council people, be interested in eliminating the net zero fee on commercial development?
I am not the kind of politician who speaks confidently about things I know little about. And I think in that scenario, I would ask for the city staff, and city council are representatives of the city, and I personally am an environmental scientist and a hydrologist, and don't have a background in real estate, and so I would seek your opinion at first start. I would seek your opinion and then the opinion of my district members, and read reports on commercial development and talk to the industrial park, Arundel in District 6, and the folks that are in there, and Bill McReynolds, the developers of the world, and establish an opinion from that. But yeah, I personally don't have an opinion on that in this moment in time.
Jim, your thoughts on that question, please?
I'm not really familiar with the net zero fee. Can you give me in a nutshell what it is?
But to pay for our water infrastructure, which we all know is a challenge. Several years ago, the Water Commission engaged a study, and in fact, in the city council adopted a fee that was spread across all new development as well as residential users. So they've actually retooled the fee several times to try to lessen the impact on commercial development. But I for sure know several fairly large commercial developments that have gone to neighboring cities because the fee is so draconian on those commercial developments. So we're losing out on jobs, tax revenue, and everything else because of that fee.
What percentage is that fee? Do you know?
It's a sliding scale. It's very complicated to figure out, and I mean, you can look it up. It's very complicated, but just the fact that it impacts commercial development. I think the residential developers have taken it on, and luckily it's been a rising market, and they've been able to take that on. But commercially, it's a whole different thing when you need 4 walls and a roof to employ your employees, and next door that fee's not here, and here it costs you $750,000. Just all else being equal. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Very complicated, but it is costing us with our neighbors on possible jobs and commercial expansion.
Yeah, as a council member, my last thing I would want to do would be to drive business away or drive residents away. Because if that happens, I've failed as a council member. So if it means cutting that fee in half, then so be it. The fee's going to get cut in half, or maybe even more. To a fee that would work for the business, and the business says, yeah, we can absorb that fee at that rate, but at the existing rate, we can't absorb it. It's too high. So yeah, I would definitely be looking at cutting those fees and any other business fees that are just, not warranted. There's a individual I know whose son was on my soccer team. I also coached soccer here for the last 8 years, and a little bit baseball too, but he has a physical therapy business in the city, the downtown area. And he told me to put a sign up, he had to pay like a $1,800 fee just to put a sign up. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, a small fee, okay, but an $1,800 fee for a sign for a business to me is unacceptable. So I've been looking at reducing all those fees.
Thank you, Jim. Bill Reynolds, please.
So I think it's interesting, here in District 5, we had Mr. Softies open up in the old surf yogurt store. So you had a like business come in with a like business. The net zero fee for Mr. Softies was $50,000 on it. That's a lot of soft serve to sell. There was a if you look at the supplemental packet for Monday night, Prime Steakhouse purchased the Ventura Beach Club at the extreme northern portion of Maine. They want to open a new restaurant there. They wrote into the council the net zero fee is $200,000 for them to open that restaurant on it. So it's a rock and a hard place. Do we need the net zero fee? Do we need the water fees? Yes. Do we need to collect them at the front? Probably not. Could we start looking at advertising that over a period of time so that you don't have to sell, a lot of steak or a lot of soft serve at the beginning? I think, we can look at it, continue to look at how that gets done on it. We do need to encourage our commercial. We need to keep our commercial development we have, and we need to figure out how to get new businesses. And obviously, having those costs front loaded are very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill McReynolds. Councilmember Lori Brown, your thoughts on this question, please.
So this question was asked in a PAC interview, and so, I mean, my position on it. So, but I will just say that business and residents together shoulder the burden of improving our water infrastructure. And as it was mentioned earlier, the city had to raise water fees to our ratepayers over a 5 to 7 year period, and it increases every year. If in comparison to other cities, what our residents were paying for water was considerably lower for cities that were of the same size. And unfortunately, that meant we had to bring that up because our infrastructure was crumbling. We didn't have a connection to the state water. We had paper credits. That meant the water that we owned was just paper. We had to sell it to other cities, and we didn't actually get any water from that. The Mound Basin has multiple users. The farmers own the tables under which the water is under their land. The Ventura River there's lawsuits, and we have to continue decreasing the amount of water we receive from there. And then the environmentalists are are saying we need to reroute water from the estuary and put it somewhere else, and we don't want to waste that water, and we can't throw it in the ocean. So then that's where we came up with Ventura Water Pure. As one of the things as a result of that was net zero, to ask businesses to share in the cost of building that infrastructure. Do I think that it's a little bit exorbitant? Yes, I do believe it's a little bit high. I do support us taking another look at it. Do I support it being removed totally 100% to go away? I can't say that, because I'd have to talk with our water managers to find out if we did that, what that would mean for us building the current infrastructure. And then when that conversation comes up about we need more affordable housing, or don't build anymore, or why are we building if we don't have any water, then that puts a council member and your electeds and the legislators in a difficult position, because it's like, what is the most important? What is the priority? And that's the issue. Again, as I said earlier, it's multiple plates spinning at the same time. They're all the priority. And what I've talked to several business owners, and sorry, I'm just gonna say this last thing and I'm done. And they say that they're willing to pay the fee as long as there's guarantees that there's certainty in the process, and that they're gonna get their return on their investment. I think part of the issue in Ventura is that we've been trying to streamline that process because there has not been certainty. So they spend all that money, and then they realize that they may lose all of their investment and make no profit. And I think what I've been trying to do while I've been council is focus in on that process and making it more certain. Thank you.
Jim Duran?
Yeah, so, let's put it this way. People are talking about affordable housing and needing affordable housing, and that's great, but how are they still gonna be able to live in affordable housing if they're not making the income that they need to make in order to live in those houses? And, Brad was saying we've lost businesses. There's some great businesses in Goleta and Oxnard that didn't come here because of all the obstacles. And it's not just the net zero fee, it's the obstacles and the hoops that they got to jump through. We don't treat, unfortunately, I believe that we don't run our city like a business and treat those coming in like customers. And because of that, people go elsewhere. Like, if I'm going to start a business and I'm not treated well, why would I want to do business here? And then all of a sudden, now you throw this fee on me. Am I saying it should go away completely? Like, I'm open to that discussion because there's other ways to create revenue. Like, let's just say a prosperous business can give a percentage back of what they make, and then we can make it up that way. There's other ways to create revenue through the businesses if they prosper. If they don't prosper, we don't prosper. We don't have the job. We need high-paying jobs in Ventura so our family members don't have to move. So your kids don't have to move to another state or another country. We need higher-paying jobs here, and the way to do that is to attract them by giving them incentives. And so I'm all for that, having that conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim Duran. Our next question, and we'll start with Jim Rundle, please. What is your view on cause?
Cause. Cause? Yes.
Cause or cars?
It looks like C-A-U-S-E.
I asked the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The group-
Wait, this gentleman was going to ask a question.
Oh. District 5, so it's really directed towards Bill. But cause now, cause, it's a group that's very active here in the Ventura County area, from Oxnard to whatever. I was just wondering what your stance on them was. It was an open-ended question. It wasn't meant for you to take like a specific directive towards it.
Can you tell me who the cause group is? I haven't heard of it.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. Yeah.
That's part of the question.
Yeah.
That's part of the
And
question,
if you,
Jim.
yeah,
Part of the question.
that's what
Yeah.
you're familiar with. Then
I'm not familiar with it.
Thank you, sir. Bill?
Enter to Bluetooth.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so I am familiar with Cause. I've had a couple opportunities to work with them in my assistance in the chamber, some of the housing policies. I think Cause, has its worldview in terms of, and what they are is I would say primarily focused right now on housing is one of the areas there. They partnered with Housing for All and they came up with a list of 12 things that they're looking to do. I would say of that list of 12 items, I think 10 of them are very doable and things that we should be working towards on them. And I had started some of those initial efforts with the chamber in terms of working towards landlord education. If our landlords kicking people out for no reason, is it legal? Probably not. You know, we need to have education so that the landlords know what the rules are. And I think, you know, Paz brings up some valid points there. I think some of the items that they were looking for get a little more progressive and have some unintended consequences. But, you know, generally I think they're trying to make a difference. And it's an organization that, you know, we need to sit down with and have a conversation with and understand what they're, you know, looking to achieve. And if we can agree to move the ball forward and compromise on a couple issues that do make everybody's lives better, we should be doing that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bill. Councilmember Brown.
Can you repeat the question?
Exactly how it's written. What is your view on cause?
My view on cause is that they're an action-oriented organization, and I appreciate the work that they're doing, because what a lot of people don't realize is as a legislator, you need people on the outside to help give you a perspective and a purview that you don't have on the inside at the top, on the dais. Their organizations are really, they do the research, they get statistics, they find out information about housing, about industrial pollution, about livable wages, about affordable housing, tenant protections, and they're giving their opinion. It doesn't mean that we're going to legislate cause into city government. What we're doing is we're taking the opinion of cause, we're taking the opinion from the chamber, we're taking opinion from any of the groups, social justice, business, you know, stakeholders, community members, and we're taking it all in a group and we're saying each one of those represents a segment within the community, and each one of those voices are equally important. And how can we take those voices and see how we can do what's best for all? And so with cause, specifically, full disclosure, I've worked with them, I've had conversations with them, I've sat on their board in the past before I was elected years ago, and what they do is they train young Latino leaders for the future. And I think that's important for the city of Ventura because a large percentage of our population, over 30%, I think almost 40% now is Latino. And I think it's important for them to continue to train people to be at the decision-making table. So that's what I know about cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Duran, what is your view on cause?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your question. You know, I was working with Project Understanding and grew up on the Avenue, and so was familiar with like Kellogg Park. I was around in the beginning when Kellogg Park got started, and I know that they were part of that, and they're also part of making sure that there's the farm workers are, you know, they're being taken care of, and there's no unjust evictions and things like those things are all great, and we need to work together on those things. And for that, I would support those things. That makes sense.
Thank you, Jim. Steph, please.
Thanks for your question. So Patagonia is a 1% for the planet business. So 1% of the profits at the end of the fiscal cycle are given to kind of advocacy grassroots nonprofits. And for years, Patagonia has funded cause, and specifically around the environmental work that they do in Ventura County. Most recently, the advocacy they do, what they're doing on the Avenue against the compressor station. And so that is, I support cause and the work that they do, not only for environmental justice, but also for farm worker rights, affordable housing, and all of the other work that they do. I think they're amazing. I hope you do too.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure.
Anyone who really looks at cause has not looked at the unintended consequences that they do.
Yeah.
I'm not taking that from Bill, I'm taking that from Thomas Hill. They put in rent control down in Oxnard, and after they did that, what happened was rent prices went up dramatically. What I do for a living is I do sewer inspections for real estate sales. And after cause came in and they got rent control passed, what ended up happening is that's when the big corporate buyers came in from Los Angeles. And I'm talking about what they would do is I would have 20 inspections, 20 different properties, 20 different homes, and there were 20 different names, 20 different trusts that came up. Because the mom and the pop homeowners weren't able to deal with all the regulation. But guess who could do with all the regulation? A big corporation that has the lawyers to go ahead and say, this is how you got to divide everything up. You talk about how Cause is talking about the farm workers. Go back and look how Cesar Chavez improved the life of farm workers, and then compare that to what Cause is doing. Cause is not.
Sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome for that. We got next question coming from here. I appreciate everyone's time too. It's coming from Mr. Mike Kermode, who is here in person. Mike, take it away.
Yeah, my question is, what's your opinion on the cities in California that are banning natural gas in new construction?
Me?
Oh, excuse me. You know, we're going to go with you, Mr. McReynolds. I apologize. Thank you, sir.
So I think where we're at right now in we have a new building code that will take effect on January 1 of 23. The industry fully believes the January 1, 26 code will require, January 1, 2026 will require all new construction to be all electric on it. That's fully where we believe that we're going as an industry. The challenge becomes going backwards on it. Because that's, even if you take the needle and you're doing the greenhouse gases and you stop all new construction, that doesn't move the needle backwards on it. So what we have to do is we have to figure out ways, if we're truly interested in doing that as a society, is how to move the needle backwards. And that can only be done through incentives. So we have to figure out how to incentivize that. We can't require it because of the cost. I mean, at the end of the day, if we have a grandmother doing her home and we require her to go to induction cooking, the cost is just going to be too outrageous. So we have to figure out ways that we might be able to incentivize it and encourage it, but it's going to take a long time before we can require it. But I think on new construction, again, my thought process is on January 1, 2026, that all new construction will be all electric, and actually January 1, 2029, all new construction will be no greenhouse gases on it. But I think it's really moving backwards, it's coming up with incentives to encourage people to do it, but we can't require it.
Thank you, Bill. Councilmember Brown?
Repeat the question, please.
Absolutely. What is your opinion on the cities banning natural gas in new constructions? Cities, not the city, but cities banning natural gas in new construction.
So I think I probably have a more controversial position on that. I do believe that it's important for us to stay on the path to sustainability and diversifying our energy resources and, decreasing our dependence on fossil fuels, and making sure that we don't create new pipelines for gas and I want to be clear, and make sure that the industrial pollution created by the plant that from SCE or Southern California Gas, I keep getting SCE and Edison mixed up, but that they are not allowed to, or that I'm trying not to make a position, because as a council member it might come before us, so I can't really say a position, but what I do want to say is that it's important for us to decrease industrial pollution in residential areas, and I really believe that. Having said that, I just think it's also important that we support the state's mandate, which is decrease cars that are running off of gas and more with electric. At the same time, I just wanted to say that I want to understand better how we can make sure that we don't allow one utility to monopolize. Because when you have one utility that's monopolizing, the prices are going to go up, and I'm not sure what's going to control those prices. So that's my reservation with it. And I know, having raised my kids as a single parent for many years, the fact that I can pay all my utilities separately really helped me, because I can pay one utility, wait 2 months, pay another one the next month, wait 2 months, and then that way I can still afford all my bills. But if you have one utility for your everything in your house, and everything gets shut off at the same time, because before it was your dryer works off gas, your stove might be gas, and then your lights were electricity. So I'd be concerned about people that don't have a lot of money.
Thank you so much. Jim?
What Bill said actually is exactly, what I would feel, what I feel. And, I just wonder how in the world, even right now, we're told, no more electric cars, and then all of a sudden, don't use your electricity because it's hot and you can't. I don't think we're ready. We're not ready to do that. And so I'm not in a hurry to get rid of natural gas, and everybody's going to say, well, what about the global warming, and what about, and I'm thinking, what about Japan and China, and are they with us? I don't think so. So I just say, no, not yet. I think, I forgot I got an environmentalist next to me. She's going to tear it up right now. Anyway, so I just say, I don't know if we're really ready for that. Not right now. And so, anyway.
Yeah.
Please go right ahead. Steph, same question to you. What is your opinion about cities banning natural gas in new construction?
I mean, I think new construction, first to Bill's point, if it's code, then in my opinion, doesn't matter, and it has to happen. But my personal opinion is actually quite mixed. We do need to set some sort of management for new construction, but the emphasis needs to be on existing structures, and the incentives and the city communicating the tax subsidies that have come recently from the Inflation Reduction Act to homeowners, and communicating how they can upgrade things like water heaters and gas stoves to electric options. I think specifically in natural gas in the home, I think it's great up to the cook stove. And that's, I think, actually, it's a place where the homeowner and the resident should be making the decision themselves, not necessarily the city or the government. Because I do think there's real preferences for that. But water heaters, literally every other kind of component within the household, I personally think it's valid, but the cook stove, I think, should be a personal preference of the homeowner.
Thank you, Steph. Jim, question to you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, gas, it's an important part of our energy resources. It really is. Now, does there need to be safety and double safety aspects involved in it? Absolutely, because no one wants to have another incident like happened in LA with the gas that went on and on. That was an unfortunate incident, but it doesn't mean you get rid of gas. I don't think that's the answer. Gas plays an important part in our energy resources. As we all saw when we had that big heat wave throughout the state of California was on a flex alert, told individuals do not charge your electric vehicles. Okay, so then what's everyone going to do? Just walk everywhere? That's not feasible. It's not realistic. It's not in the world we live in. Is there a place for gas to be used in a safe, efficient manner? Absolutely. So I'm not in favor of banning new development, new housing or businesses from using gas.
Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate that. Next question comes out to everybody here from an anonymous resident. How can a city council determine what individuals do with their property? Isn't that a form of communism? I understand respect for neighbors, but how can you regulate respect? So that question is simply, how can city council determine what individuals do with their property? Councilmember Brown?
That's a great question. So property rights, if at all possible, because of the state and federal constitution, we always want to make sure that we try to protect those. However, when it comes to droughts, extended droughts, and the safety of people, so let's say the whole entire city, we were in a situation where we just barely have enough water. As I explained earlier, we have to continue to decrease the amount of water from the Ventura River. And I don't know, when I was younger, I don't know about you guys, but you drink the tap water and it's chewy because the water tables on this side of town in the basin had got so low that you could taste the iron in it. So we had to stop drinking that. And we still don't have the state water connection. And they said, well, most of the water that we have left, people are watering their lawns with it. So the question, And I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening. I'm creating a hypothetical scenario, correct? So if that was a situation of property rights versus what government is asking someone to do, then city council does have within their powers to say, let's create an emergency ordinance because of an extended drought that suggests, hey, we don't have enough water right now for everyone to drink, so we're going to put a temporary moratorium on watering lawns. Now, do we want to do that? No, we're going to do everything we can to try to keep from doing that because we absolutely don't want to make anyone angry. But that's just one example. So does the city have the power to do it? Yes. Are we going to always do it? No, we're going to do whatever we can not to. So that's my best answer to that question.
Jim?
Yeah, well, I would love some clarification on that question. I know that somebody wrote that. I know maybe you want to be anonymous, but like, what specifically are you talking about? Because what they can and can't do with their property. I mean, are we talking about building whatever they want to build? What?
I didn't ask the question, but I'll just give an example, because it just got brought up, Airbnb. So someone goes through their time, they put in all that money to fix it up and to do whatever, and then the government, we talked about creating revenue for the city, but what did really the city do? And so now you're just taking what a private homeowner, what a private business owner did.
Thank you. Because, I'm looking at that going, well, what specifically are we talking about? So like, I mean, we have building codes, we got all those things. We already have rules in place, right? So as long as we follow those rules, but when we want to do an Airbnb, there shouldn't be any reason why that would be taken from it if we follow all the rules. So that's the thing. We have guidelines for a reason, right? So if we follow those guidelines, there shouldn't be an issue. So I'm not sure if there was something that was taken away from somebody that they're saying, I'm really upset about this because this was taken away. But the reality is, I mean, there should be only so much. The rules are set in place, we follow the rules, shouldn't be an issue. But if they're stepping over that, like, for example, City Center Transitional Living, downtown Ventura, we cannot change the windows out on the first floor. They're old windows. They're windows that were put there in the late 50s, early 60s. We're not allowed to change them out. Yet, everything in the new buildings that are going up, energy efficient windows that are going into all the new housing, we can't do that because it doesn't look right. And so, when you're looking at things like that, you're saying we need to make up our mind on what makes the most sense. What makes the most sense? Are we energy efficient, or are we going to look for the aesthetics? What is it that we want to do? But my time's up, so I'm going to pass it to Steph.
Thank you, Steph.
Yeah, whether it's water or Airbnbs, the context of this question I feel like is really interesting and important. But I mean, the only thing I can think of is like on Halloween, I have jury duty. Do I want to go to jury duty on Halloween? No, but like that's part of being an American citizen and part of the system and structure that we live in. And I think the same applies to being in an incorporated area of the city and having your property in that area. And by being in the city and you have to pay those property taxes. And I don't know, I feel like it's, it depends on the context of the homeowner and what exactly they're seeking from, or what their issue with the city is in that specific area.
Thank you, Steph. Mr. Ronda?
Yeah, as far as that goes, I mean, we've all heard the term, every home that's his man's castle. Man's castle is everyone is his home, right? But at the same point, unless you have a big piece of land, a bunch of acres and there's no one around you, and even then, there still needs to be some safety guidelines for the homeowner's safety and anyone else that's going to enter that property. And really, that's what the ordinances are for. That's what the fire codes are for, and the building codes are for, is to protect, and not just the homeowner, but any other visitors to that property. Just because, say, a homeowner has a fence that's falling down, but they like it that it's leaning and falling down. Well, that's a danger to anyone. If there's a sidewalk on that area where it's leaning, that can be hit by that fence. So that's where the city comes in and says, hey, through code enforcement, you need to put your fence up. And if you don't, we're gonna start fining you. And that's for the protection of the citizens and residents in that area. Do I believe there can be an overreach of that? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same point, when it's done in the manner that safety is the governing body and the governing aspect for the owner and the residents and the visitors to that area, I think that's critical.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I think John Locke, who was one of the folks that we developed our Constitution under, had the saying, the more specific you are, the freer you are. So everybody, when they buy a piece of property, there's rules in place. There's zoning, there's general plan, there's land use, everything like that. So if you are compliant with that, then yeah, you should be able to do what you would like to do on that piece of property. It's set out when you acquired it, and you should be able to then move forward based on those rules that are in place when you acquired it. So the more specific we are, the freer we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I want to appreciate everyone's attention so far as we wrap up. And Councilmember Brown did let me know before the meeting started, she has at 8 o'clock. We want you to stay at 30 more minutes, so it's up to you, but she did mention that, and I want to give you that respect. Okay? As we move to our next question, we're going to start with Mr. Duran on this. Okay, Mr. Duran? The city spends in excess of $1 million per year on homelessness. Hundreds of thousands on putting out fires in barrancas and river bottoms. What is your solution to fix these problems?
Yeah, really? So,
1 minute.
yeah. So listen, in a nutshell, the homelessness is different shapes and sizes. It's not a one size fits all. There's things that need to be dealt with. But I was just at the Hopes meeting on Tuesday, and one of the things they said is there's a difference between homelessness, vagrancy, and then there's now what we call enforcement. And they were talking about, we know homelessness. These are people that live on the streets that really want help. They want to get out of what they're doing. Then we have the vagrants who are law breaking and a whole different ballgame, right? So my question, and so I was told at this meeting that, so what we're going to do is we're going to work really hard to get in the river bottoms, make sure that nobody's living in those river bottoms anymore, where all the fires are, where all the trash is, where all that is at. So I asked the question, I said, okay, we get what the difference is between homeless and vagrancy, but when someone says to you in the river bottom, as a police officer comes down and says, hey, you can't stay here anymore, I have a shelter you can go into, and they say, I don't want to go, I want to live here. How are you going to enforce that? Well, the problem is, Jim, we don't have the beds for that. So in order for us to enforce that, we need to have the beds. So then I looked over at the one who was running the shelter in Ventura, and I says, how many beds do you have open? She says, 4. Why in the world do we have 4 beds open if we can enforce that right now? Listen, we got 4 beds open in a 54-bed shelter. Why do we need more? Why do we need more beds? How about we fill those up first? Amen. Okay? And then we'll decide what we want to do after that. But my time is up. So thank you.
Please.
Yeah, so 2 things really on this. One, just a few weeks ago, Newsom passed a $700 million fund specifically on encampments, and I think the city should immediately apply for one of those grants to direct some of those funds towards the Ventura River and the Santa Clara River. Second, also just in the last few weeks, the county passed something that specifically eliminates the red tape to cut down arundo, which is, I know y'all will all recognize it. It is a gigantic 10-foot straw-like invasive species that is in a lot of our riverbeds. And currently, it grows so thick and so quickly that it is basically used as a shelter for folks who, and a kind of barrier for folks who are down in the river bottoms. So now that we have cut the red tape to remove that, so not only, so it'll be more difficult for folks to end up kind of hiding and staying down there, but it's a twofold win as well in that arundo, being an invasive species, it actually draws up a ton of water from the river, and so by eliminating it, you not only remove the barrier and the place for folks to end up sleeping and getting them, pairing that with temporary and permanent shelters for the folks who are currently living in the street. That's an important parallel. But we are making sure that the water in our groundwater and in our river systems is staying there, going to other native species and not Orendo.
Thank you, Steph. Jim?
Yeah, that's an important issue that the city and the county is dealing with, and that's what it is going to really take to solve this issue. The city working with the county. The city alone can't solve this homeless issue. It's got to be a combination of both entities working together. As far as the river bottom goes, my solution would be put up a fence, prohibit people from being able to get over into that area to make that their home. People that are there, tell them they have to leave. They're in violation of an ordinance, if there's a county city ordinance, and if they don't leave, then they're going to be cited. And or, further legal action from there if need be. But again, with homelessness, I do want to take a compassionate approach. Get them into homeless shelters if they're willing to go. Get them into drug rehab programs. Get them better. Get them hooked up with possible employment that they can go to once they're finished with their programs. And again, there's no easy one solution, one shoe fits all with this. It's a combination of multiple aspects working together to solve this problem.
Thank you, Jim. Bill?
Yeah, the challenge with homelessness is we so want to believe that if we spend enough money, that there's some magic pill, we can just figure out the right formula. Unfortunately, what puts people in homelessness is different for every person. It's addiction, it's mental illness, it's vagrancy. So it's going to take a different solution for each individual. And we just have to realize that we're going to have to spend the time and effort to do that. Specifically regarding your question, I've been walking my district extensively, and the concern really is the barranca, is what I'm hearing about, is seeing the homeless moving into the barrancas. And obviously those are next to homes. A fire there can really be a dangerous situation. So we need to start, getting the patrol task force. I know the city council just approved 2 additional officers. We really need to get the patrol task force out here stronger on the east end, cleaning out the barrancas before they really become a problem. I think, we're at that tipping point where it could become a problem if we don't do anything. I think getting those 2 additional patrol task force members, thank you, Councilmember Brown, for approving that. But we just got to get them out here to the east end to clean that up so that we don't lose a fire grows into something else. I think we had a fire not too long ago in the Harlem Barranca that went out of control and went over to Snapper Jacks, and we can't tolerate that. They lost all those homes. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Councilmember Brown?
So go ahead and repeat the question.
Absolutely. The city spent in excess of $1 million on homelessness, hundreds of thousands on putting the fires out in the barrancas and the river bottoms. What's your solution to fix these problems?
Solution. Okay, so this is another question about local control versus personal control, because we talk about homeless persons or people first, and they make their own decisions, and there's state and federal laws that govern what we can make them do. So essentially, we're not allowed to make them do anything. We have to get them to agree to. I currently work for whole person care with the County of Ventura, where I assist with referrals for unhoused individuals to wraparound services. And they have to, the caseworkers have to ask them, do you want mental health services? Do you want substance abuse services? Do you want help with housing? And at half the time, they'll say no. So for those resistant and hard to serve individuals, those people want to be where they're at. So the question becomes, for safety, what are solutions for safety even in that situation? And my thought on that purview is, the first thing I did when I got elected was have them give me the police task force, take me down to the river bottom. She had her gun with me. We went down there and we looked at all the encampments, and one of the biggest things was trash. And what they do is they collect large amounts of trash and then burn it. And so one of my thoughts that I shared with Harrison, our trash consultant, or the trash person that provides Harrison's and Sons that picks up our trash, is it possible for us as a city to regularly pick up trash in the river bottom so that they will not have to burn it? Of course, funding and all those other issues get in the way. And that because they have, and then there's the county jurisdiction, as was mentioned, and then funding. Oh, one last thing.
Go ahead.
The fire services county jurisdictional areas, and I think the county needs to start reimbursing the city for the services that we provide that are in county areas.
Thank you so much. Quick reminder, we have about 6 questions left. Respecting everyone's time. Maybe we'll go to 1 minute so we can fulfill everyone's questions. Thank you so much, candidates. Appreciate that. As we're moving along here, Steph, this question is for you, please. What are your thoughts on the new state law that eliminate parking mandates for development? The timer has started.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I mean, we need an inactive transportation plan. We need to be better about planning for the cars and trucks that go through the city and deliver products through the city, and that is absolutely a priority for me. And we need to figure out a way to have parking throughout town in a way that can support the folks who do have vehicles, but also, we need parking. I'll short.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, anytime any new business goes into place, there has to be parking. There are parking designated areas for vehicles, for unloading and loading of trucks, so they can get their supplies. That's critical. Without parking, I don't know how individuals are going to get to the business. I don't know how the business is going to thrive without customers, right? No customers, no business. So that is a mandate or a law that I'm not in favor of. I think there absolutely has to be parking mandates for all businesses.
Thank you. Bill?
There's no market for it whatsoever. Nothing will get built like that. Ventura County doesn't connect that way. Maybe you could do something like that in San Francisco, in an extremely walkable area, but there's zero market for that to ever occur in Ventura.
Thank you so much.
I'd just like
Councilmember
to,
Brown.
yes, I'd like to say as delegate to the Southern California Association of Governments and a former member of VCOG, which is the Ventura Council of Governments, where they take the RENA numbers and they discuss transit-oriented development and how people get around and work and where they work and how that all happens, the workforce development. And, it was very clear even back then that, cars is something that's going to be a part of Ventura County for a little while. And I want to make it clear, the city of Ventura does not currently have any proposed ordinance or policy or anything to ban or to get rid of parking as it relates to housing or development. I personally would not support it at this point in time because I don't think, as was mentioned, the city of Ventura is not ready for that. However, I do want to say that the city of Ventura did vote in, I believe it was in 2019, a parking authority to address this very issue, to say we need to be able to raise money to create parking structures if we're going to decrease parking in certain other areas like downtown that's closed so that we can have Ventura move. So it's being discussed.
Thank you, Lori. Jim?
So the simple answer is no. We need the parking. We don't need to get rid of them. I think everything was said.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duran, on that one. Next question is going to start over here back at the front again with Mr. Rundle. Jim, would you have voted to remove the statue of Father Sarah? Why or why not?
I was not in favor of removing the statue of Ventura Sarah. He's part of the history of the city. And we've seen this happen throughout the nation, tearing down monuments that we've had for many, many years. The problem, the other thing I forgot to let you folks know is I was a history major from UC Irvine. So the problem with tearing down your history is that you're going to repeat the mistakes that you made again. And no one in our nation wants to repeat any of our mistakes we've made. And it's not a matter of glorifying or uplifting what was done, but it's a matter of maintaining our history, and that is critical. You lose your history, you lose your nation. You lose the soul of your nation and the soul of your community. So that is critical. I'm not in favor of that.
Thank you. Bill?
So it's obviously a very divisive issue, it's a tricky issue. Full disclosure, my kids go to Catholic school, my wife teaches at a Catholic school, so I have my personal opinion. That doesn't make my opinion right. I think we needed to take it to a vote of the people and put it out there and see where it stands. Because I think there is a portion of the population that wants to see it there, in place. It's part of our history. We are one of the original missions. We're the 9th mission created in the state. We're one of the oldest cities because of that. It is very much part of our history. So I would have been in favor of taking it to a vote of the city ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown?
Yes, so I think we already know how I voted on that issue. The council unanimously voted to move the statue from the front of City Hall, which was a park, to the mission. And we did that because we felt like that would allow us to maintain the history that is a part of the city of Ventura. If you look at many parts of City Hall, inside and outside, Father Sarah and priest faces are still all over the place. So we're not demolishing City Hall or anything like that. So I think, again, it goes back to the voices in the community who said that they wanted to hear and know that their voices and that their history was recognized as well. At the same time, I want to say that.
Is it at the mission now? Has it been?
It's in a storage facility in Los Angeles.
That's what I thought.
It's at a storage facility in Los Angeles because it's currently being litigated.
Thank you so much, Lori. Jim, please.
So the thing is absolutely not what I voted for that. In full disclosure, I went to Holy Cross School. I went there for 8 years, went to a year and a half at the same Bonaventure. But I want to tell you that I read other things about Father Sarah and how much he loved the people of this city. He loved them. And so when you look at how powerful you guys are here. You guys are here. And the majority of the people aren't here, right? So what I'm kind of tired of is the minority of people, and I'm talking not the few that yell and scream and the voices get in your head, and we get swayed by that. That's the thing that drives me nuts, because the reality is this statue needs to stay here because it's part of our history. It is so part of our history. And so that's where I stand.
That's cause.
Thank you.
That's cause. That's what they do.
Steph, your answer, please.
My short answer is, to Bill's point, I do not think it should have been voted on by the city council. I think it should have been voted by the residents of Ventura. And a longer thing, just to speak on history, is in the context of my family coming from Austria, is I think it's one thing to understand your history and another thing to, I think there's a balance of what is out in public spaces and how you speak to history instead of monumentalizing it and showcasing it in that form. And I think there's a balance between the two, but I think specifically in this case, it should have been voted on by the residents.
Thank you so much, Steph. Okay, we're moving over to our questions here. Appreciate everyone's patience and being involved. This comes from Pam. Pam would like to know, what has been your greatest, or who has been your greatest motivator to run for city council? This question is going to start with you, Mr. McReynolds.
I would probably say my mother is probably similar to Steph. My mother comes from Ecuador. She chose to come to this country because it's the greatest country in the world, and she instilled that, those values in me, that this is the greatest country in the world, and we all have a responsibility to serve.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. What has been your greatest, or who has been your greatest motivator to run for city council?
I'm not sure how to answer that question because ever since I was 12, I wanted to run for office. It was just something that was in me that I always wanted to do. There was not one particular person that said, hey, you should run. I had a lot of experience in public budgeting and public service, and I dedicated my whole entire career to public service. And when the opportunity came to run for office, I got the training, I took advantage of the opportunity, and I ran. And I wanted to allow the city of Ventura to benefit from the public municipal experience that I had to their benefit, because we had council members who had been on council for 20 or 30 years who knew nothing about affordable housing, didn't know anything about transit-oriented development, didn't know anything about special districts and that sort of thing. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Jim?
Well, it was never my ambition to be in politics, to run for city council, but I saw a need. And when I was asked, would you consider running? I said, I really need to pray about it. My wife's got to be on board. All the boards that I work with have to be on board. And so if you would say, if there was one thing, when I prayed about it, I really felt the Lord was opening up a door for me at this time to run and to make a difference in our community. And when my wife didn't say no, I said, hallelujah. And then those around me. So like Lori said, you know, there was a lot of voices that spoke into my life and said this would be a great time. So thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
Bill, don't tell my mom, but I'm not going to say her. I love her, and she is an inspiration. But honestly, the reason why I ran is the kids next door. I grew up in a neighborhood where I could climb the trees in the neighborhood and run around and be able to play basketball on the street and not worry about a car going 10, 15 miles over the speed limit. And I want them to have that same experience. I want them to be able to go to the Little League fields or to school by foot and not have to be driven by their mom. That's a neighborhood that we should dream for our kids. And so that's why I ran.
Thank you, Jim.
I'd have to say the greatest motivator is my wife, who's sitting right here with me. She and I have talked about city issues that have been going on for the last several years, and just the direction we feel the city's heading is not the direction we want to see it go. And had the city been doing what we felt, and talking to the residents that we've been talking to, had been doing what we felt they should have been doing, I would have just supported whoever we wanted and said, keep up the good work, you're doing awesome. We support you 100%. We don't see that happen. That's why I'm running. That's why my wife is helping me tremendously with my campaign. And really, without her, I wouldn't be up here right now.
Thank you. Bill, please. Oh. Thank you, Bill. I'm getting hungry over here. Getting a little hungry, old Spencer. This question is from Ben.
I got a different one. Yeah.
Okay, hold on here, Ben. Stand by 1 second here. Julie got her answer. Question. Julie, you asked a question right already once.
Yeah.
Do you want to go again? You want to go? You have your question ready?
I got my question ready.
I didn't get to look over your question though.
This one right.
Is it appropriate? Do you think?
I think it is.
I'll trust it.
All right. I'm trustworthy. Rather than calling for creation of revenue by increased taxing of businesses and homeowners, what Ventura government agency or project can be eliminated to spend less of our money? Nice. And will you vote against those agencies or projects?
Nice.
So unfortunately, we're just on the opposite sides. I value your opinion, and I understand why it's difficult for somebody who, or all of us, who have to pay rent, have to pay bills, have to pay for food, and then property taxes are increasing, and it's like, oh, I don't want to pay for this extra fee or this bond or this. I understand. The water fees are going up. Everything is going up. Inflation is everywhere. That doesn't miss me. After my kids were grown out of my house, they went to other places, I sent them away, and then I moved back in with my parents. I cannot afford to live in the city of Ventura, okay? I totally get that. But at the same time, the only thing that funds city services is property taxes, fee for services, and sales tax revenues. Those are
The question is, what would you get rid of? What area?
I would not get rid of, according right now to the way the budget is balanced and in the black, per city charter, the budget must be in the black every year per ordinance.
But you sit on the city council and you say that you cannot afford to live in Ventura. That's a problem.
It is
You
a
have
problem.
an opportunity to do something. He's asking.
I love dialogue, let's hold that to after the thing, let's finish your comment, please.
I just to kind of address that, I would not cut anything because everything that is in the budget is needed sorely.
Thank you, Lori. Jim?
Man, that's a great question, and I will tell you, I don't know if it's just one or two things. I think we really need to look at a lot of the programs because a lot of things need to be cut. But here's what I want to say: there's an opportunity to create revenue in our city that we're missing out on. Let me just give you a simple thing: our parks. You can't get electricity at some of our parks. There's simple things. If I want to rent a park, like, you can upsell me. You can give me electricity. You can give me benefits, the water, all of the things, but we don't offer those things. They've been, electric has been off since COVID. Why are we not creating revenue? Small thing, but a little thing. But what my point is that they're outside of property taxes and all that. We have ways to create revenue. And that's what we have to look at. Go ahead.
Jim, I'm sorry to ask, but I just need to clarify this. This is that when you say create revenue, you say create revenue as a politician, right?
No.
Well, you're saying creating revenue.
As a business person.
Okay, as a business person, I hear that as a business owner, as a property owner, of you taking more, of City of Ventura taking more of my money.
That's totally the opposite of what
And
I'm
so
saying.
what I'm saying is.
Well, that's the opposite of what I'm
So
saying.
what kind of an agency
What I'm
can
saying
we
is,
streamline or get rid of or lose? Is there an employee who's dead weight and maybe we're gonna be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on their pension? I mean, these are some real things that we have to look at. And at the end of the day, if we're the taxpayer and you guys are the ones serving us, I mean.
okay, so tell me what other organization has been able to,
I appreciate that, but I want to allow that conversation to be after. Can you answer the question directly?
I'll stick around. I'll stick around if you want to.
Your question directly is what services would you cut, correct?
Absolutely.
Did you have a chance to answer that question, Jim? Do you feel?
well, there are some homeless services that I would cut because it's not benefiting anybody, not the person. So that's one area. That's why I said there's a lot, but that's one area.
Thank you so much, Jim. Steph?
I wouldn't cut anything, but I question city staff who make six figures and don't live in Ventura. And I sincerely question that, and I know some of them have gotten promotions recently and pay raises, so I would question that.
Thank you. Jim?
As far as the city budget goes, I've been going through the budget. There's a lot of waste in the city budget. There really is. There's a lot of pork barrel spending, as we've heard, right? That can be cut. That can be lowered. And my goal would be to lower it. One of the city itemized budget was interdepartmental spending. That went from 11 million previous fiscal year to 18 million for this current fiscal year. It went up $7 million, this interdepartmental budget. To me, that's unacceptable. That's government waste, that's government overspending at its finest. I would cut that immediately. And put those funds to the areas that it needs to go: law enforcement, fire, and improving our streets, improving our infrastructure for our city that benefits all residents, not just a few people. So yeah, there's definitely spending that can be redirected and cut. That could come back really with lower taxes for the residents and businesses. Our property taxes are way too high. They just are. I mean, you buy a home now today for $1 million, you have a $10,000 property tax bill a year, right? For $1 million, 1%. It's almost $1,000 a month, right? Just for property taxes.
Thank you, Jim. Bill?
The water department. The only city that I'm aware of that has an entirely separate water department. It should be part of public works. So we have an entire second administrative level that no other organization that I'm aware of has. So I think the water department needs to be consolidated into the public works department. We have a city engineer that's more than capable of managing that. We have a public works director. Every other jurisdiction, the water department is part of public works. So why do we have a separate water department?
Just out of curiosity, do you know how much that costs? Or?
It's one of the biggest expenditures. Administration.
I'm not trying to nail you on a figure, but is that like millions of dollars? Is it like
With the
$100,000?
administration, yeah, it's millions of dollars, you know,
Okay.
on it. So yeah, no, definitely, I think we need to look at consolidating the administration under one department. I mean, every other jurisdiction, you have a water, you go to public works to deal with water. I think we need some charter reforms in terms of the city attorney's office. You know, we outsource all of our city, we hire special attorneys for all of it. Why do we have a city attorney, multiple city attorneys? So that's a charter reform. The city attorney's office is dictated in the charter. So, and there are a variety of other charter reforms that I would like to look also on it, but those specifically.
Thank you, Bill, for answering that question. Laura, you started that question, correct?
Yes, I did.
Thank you so much. All right, well, let's get wrapping up here. We're gonna do a quick open floor to make sure everyone has a chance to ask the question that they put in the bucket so they can't walk away. Man, yes, your question.
I have a question. Did I mishear you earlier, Lori, when you were saying about the money that was supposed to be spent somewhere and it wasn't? Do you remember that? About
The Measure O.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So,
My question is, where did that money go and who said it should go there?
so there's a Measure O committee, and the Measure O committee has an oversight over that. And it's open to the public, so I welcome you to sit in on that, but they watch over whatever gets spent and they make the approvals and the recommendations to the staff on what should or should not be allowed based upon how the voters approved it, how it was presented. Now, I wasn't on council when Measure O was put on the ballot as an initiative and voted on by the people. But I do remember that when it was sent out to the public and when they did the promotion for it, it was said, oh, we want to protect our firefighters
Thank you.
and
I
our
was
first
thinking, what's the
responders.
firefighter?
Right. And not a lot of the money went to the police department. They are first responders as well. And for one-time funds for projects across the city. So the money is still there. It's not wasted.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. So everybody talked about homelessness and, you know, the monies that go to it and what you would do. When does my safety and my city become a priority for you? Because I'm a long distance runner. I cannot run outside anymore in our community. It is unsafe. There are homeless people there who scare the crap out of you. And I have a heart for them. I have a sister who's been homeless. And I understand it. At 9 years old, my mom had us homeless when we were growing up here in Ventura for a very short period of time. It wasn't anything she wanted to do. It just had to happen. It happened that way. But I understand that and I have empathy for it. But my taxpayer dollars go to keep me safe in Ventura, and that is not happening anymore. And it is very frustrating for many people. We were shut in with COVID, and now we're shut in because of policies that are being made in the state of California, and something has to be done here. We cannot keep living like this. What are you gonna do to keep us safe?
Are you, who you asking that question to?
We'll do a quick improv question. Let's do 30 seconds to a minute, just briefly. We'll, Jim, you pick up the microphone, so go.
I can talk to you afterwards about this because it's a much deeper conversation. But when you're talking about the cause of homelessness, 52% of the homeless people in our community, 53% of them are either drug addicted or they're mentally ill, and we only have.
The question was, when does my safety and my security as a taxpayer in the city of Ventura come in priority? I understand homelessness. I understand what it's doing to our state. When does the people who actually pay the taxpayer dollars, when do we get taken into consideration?
Okay, well, so I can't answer that because I'm not a council person right now. So like, we're all important. All of our lives matter. That's a big deal. All of us are important. And so that's why I was trying to tell you that in order for this to be solved, the solutions have to come. We have to work together. And it's not just, Jim had mentioned it, the city and the county need to work together. Yeah, they absolutely, and we do. There's a really good relationship right now of us working together, but it's not just a city and a county issue, it's a community issue, and we all have to come together to get solutions. But I'm in total agreement. There's a lot of projects that I already have like working on to help people. Like, you know what we have down at the park, the ambassador program that we have at the park? Wow, wouldn't it be great to have those other ambassador programs in our areas to keep us safe? But that's a longer conversation, and he only gave me 30 seconds, I took longer.
It's okay, go ahead, Steph.
Can I just quickly say, I mean, the city has regional housing needs and there's housing mandates. There's no mandate for homelessness. The city's not held accountable right now. And I think that's a problem. And I think there should be an ordinance passed that forces the city to set a plan, the city has 3 years to get folks off the street. That, I mean, there has to be some kind of legal kind of system in place that holds the city accountable for those that are unhoused.
Thank you, Steph. Good answer like that one. Direct. Go ahead, Jim. 8:30, sir.
Yeah, our safety is paramount as residents, it really is. The homeless individuals who have mental problems and are substance abusers, they're unpredictable. They just are. I did a ride along with one of our police officers yesterday, and we encountered a homeless vagrant individual who was at St. Bonaventure High School. Okay, and the officer went up to him, very cordial. He's had contact with him before, and he said, I believe his name was Sean. He said, "Oh, Sean, hey, we can't have you hanging out here. We were told by the staff at the high school that you were threatening, or not maybe threatening, but you were causing a nuisance to the high schoolers and the staff. We need you to leave." And so he started using some foul language. And
Jim, wrap it up here, please.
And long story short, the officer got him to move on and move down the street. Problem is, him moving down the street is not the solution.
Right.
There needs to be a firm solution rather than moving down the street. My goal would be to create a homeless and vagrant task force, and then have the city fund it for real solutions to get these individuals off the streets.
Thank you. Bill?
So I think one of the challenges in Ventura is we don't set the table very well. So what we're all dancing around is the Boise decision. Federal courts came through and said the Boise decision does tell you how you can enforce the law. So I think as the city council, we would owe you an answer in terms of what is the law and how can we enforce it based on the Boise decision, so that you know how we can actually deal with the homelessness. Because the Boise decision doesn't exclude you from enforcing it, it just has a mechanism. We are at a point right now, we have 714 homeless identified in the city of Ventura. If that number gets much higher, we won't be able to enforce the Boise decision. So we need to give that answer to you. How do we enforce the law, and what are we going to do to do it?
What's the Boise decision? We have time to hear that.
It was basically a court order. A gentleman was sleeping in a park in Boise, Idaho about 5 years ago. The city didn't have any shelter beds available. It went to the federal court that said the city has to provide beds for people that are homeless. And that allowed him to sleep in the park, and that's why they can still sleep in the river bottoms, because...
And there's a threshold, or how many people are in the city?
Thank you, Bill. Lori, go ahead.
Thank you, sorry.
We're respecting everyone's time. We're going to do a 1 minute wrap up with everybody. Lori, answer the last question.
This type of question is really hard to answer, but I think we touched on it. But as council members, our hands are tied to make homeless persons to do things because of the protections they have as individual humans. We can't make them do anything, and that is the thing that ties us up. So what we can do for you is you can protect your property rights. You can call the police if they're encroaching on your property, if they're or anything like that. We can call the police for that. We can't call the police because they're sleeping. We can't call the police if they're, I don't know, if they're doing something that's a nuisance but not a crime, unfortunately. Do I think that's problematic? Yes. Do I get scared if I'm at a certain place at night? Yes, I totally feel where everybody is at. But as a legislator, the laws, the state and federal laws guide what we can and can't do. We can create as many ordinances as we want. City ordinance does not preempt state or federal law. And so as much as I want to say, I'll do whatever I can to protect you, we can do whatever's in our power to do it, but if it's outside of our power, we can't legislate it.
Thank you, Lori. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We're going to give 1 minute to all of our candidates right now just to wrap it up and say why you can vote for them in the district elections coming up. It's a really big thing. Give a round of applause for our candidates, please. Thank you for coming. It's meant the world for you guys to spend the time with Ventura Forward, whether it was your birthday or just another day of the year. We really appreciate you. We're on a swift time limit, but this is part of the American democratic process, right? This democracy is about volunteers coming forward to give their time. So win or lose, whatever happens, Ventura Forward, the residents really want to tip their hat to you. So Lori, let's start with you. Maybe give us 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Wrap us up about why vote for Lori Brown for District 6.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that I didn't run because I have the desire to run for higher office. I ran because I wanted to help the city that I grew up in to benefit from what I learned working in public office or working for municipal cities. I only want to do 2 terms. This is my 2nd term. This would be, I see serving in public office as tour of duty, like being in the military, because I used to want to work in a uniformed service. It was either military, police, fire, but my mom was like, I forbid you to do that. So I was like, okay, I can find something else. I'll work in public office. It has been very difficult working in public office. It's not like a merry-go-round. And I don't take it lightly. What I am asking to be reelected just to continue the work that I started. And when I say continue the work that I started, I mean moving the city of Ventura forward. And when I say moving forward, and I heard someone say about increasing revenues, I mean, when I say increasing revenues, I don't mean increasing taxes. That's not what I mean. I mean inviting businesses into the city that's gonna bring more sales tax revenues to the city, or allowing building so that we have increased property taxes, not because we're increasing your property taxes, but because more houses are here and we get property taxes from those other houses. So I understand that the city doesn't, we no longer have redevelopment. So I want to speak a little bit towards Prop 13. My understanding of Prop 13 was that it caused for residents to keep their property taxes at a certain level, and it only increases 2% a year unless you purchase a whole brand new property, then that protection is not there. And so, but there's no protections for renters, there's no protections for anything or anyone else. And because of Prop 13, there's no funding for city services. And when redevelopment ended in 2011, that took away the other part of the funding sources for cities, which is the reason why a lot of the cities are going bankrupt. And so I felt like my knowledge of Prop 13, how city budgets work, how we can increase revenues by establishing special districts and doing all these different multiplicities of things to diversify our economic portfolios would be a benefit to the city of Ventura, because the city of Ventura did not take advantage of any of it in all the years that redevelopment was instituted. And so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to sit before you. I know we don't always agree on everything, but I just want to tell you that I hear you, and I want to continue to try to make the best decisions for all. And that means sometimes that policy, that everybody's unhappy because everyone got a little bit of what they wanted, but not everything of all of what they wanted. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. Mr. Durant, Jim, go right ahead, please.
So thank you once again, Spence and Spencer, and all of you that are here today, as well as Connect Church. It was wonderful being with you. I want you to know that the organization that I run, one of them, actually all of them, I have 3 nonprofits that I run. We don't take a dime of government funding from, not a dime, yet we have results. I run Tender Life Maternity Home, which is for homeless pregnant women and their unborn babies. And in the last 5 years, we've had, last week, baby number 38 born that has a shot. These women all get their education, they get their jobs, and we transfer them over to the city center, all without government funding. I say all that to say there are ways to fund things that doesn't take tax dollars that actually work. There's also grants out there that I don't think we take advantage of. You know, we want to continue to do things, then let's write some grants. Let's pull that money that's available to people already, that's already out there. I'm a guy that when someone says we can't do something, I say, no, let's look at the opportunities. Let's look at how we can do things. I also have an ability to be able to see the greatness in people and to see what their strengths are and to be able to work together with them. That's what we need on our city council. People that not necessarily are yes in agreement with every single thing, but are able to put our differences aside to work together for the betterment of the community. That's what we need, and I can do that. And so that's me, Jim Duran.
Thank you, Jim. Steph?
Thanks. Yeah, so thank you so much, Spencer and Spence, for hosting us today. This has been really fun. I am not going to admit that I'm an expert on everything, whether it's net zero structures, structuring fees, or residential development. What I am good at is, I'm a researcher, and all I do is ask critical questions, work collaboratively. All I do all day is talk to the various departments within Patagonia, whether it's product developers, material developers, or designers, and figure out how to solve gigantic problems while also making sure that Patagonia is making a profit. And I feel like I can take that and apply it to the city. And I want to do that not only for my neighborhood, I want to do it for the whole city, and especially for the kids next door. Ventura is a gem, but we have to make sure that the money that we're paying in terms of taxes and everything else is worth it in the end. And that needs to be the case for everyone who lives here. And right now, it's expensive to live here, and we need to know that all of the citizens in the city, it's worth it. It has to be worth it, and that starts with the city council and the decisions we make on behalf of the residents. And I'm doing this specifically for the folks in District 6 that I've talked to.
Thank you so much, Steph. Jim?
Last but not least, I think.
Bill's still there, too, yeah.
Bill's last. Thank you again, folks, for coming tonight and for questions. The council meetings I've been to, I've heard from a lot of unhappy residents. And my sense is that the city council is not listening to these residents. And that's a problem. I want to fix that. I want to change that. I want the city council to be the residents' voice. Residents express their concerns and the issues that they have. I want the council to take action, not just for it to go in one ear and out the other ear. That's not acceptable to me. That's not a leader. That's an individual doing what they want to do, and that's that. That's not how I will be if I'm elected as a city council member. Again, my goal is first and foremost public safety. We have to have public safety. We need to have all the residents feel safe in this city. That starts with increasing law enforcement presence, okay? And also fire protection, that's also critical. If the firefighters don't get the training they need, they're more likely to get injured. And an injured firefighter is not doing any good for any of us, okay? Training is critical, absolutely critical. And that's why I want to push for the fire department's training tower, training classroom, and law enforcement training facility as well. So that they can have that training that keeps them ready, keeps them prepared. And finally, housing. Again, the housing that I've seen developed around here is not development I would have approved. You've got narrow streets. You've got small lots. Basically, people are on top of each other. That doesn't create harmony. That doesn't create a relaxed and a good environment for people to come home and just be able to be the way they want to be and not feel like they're on top of their neighbor. So again, if I'm elected to city council, any new housing development is going to have street sizing for previous developments 30 years ago. You're going to have regulated street sizes, not compacted street sizes. Lot sizes of minimum 5,000 to 6,000 feet. I'm not going to go less than that because again, you're going to have people on top of people, and that's not a good or harmonious situation to be in. So please vote for me. Please tell your fellow neighbors to vote for me, and I will be the city council member that works hardest for you as the residents of the great city of Ventura.
Thank you, Jim. Bill?
Yeah, well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, but there's one person I want to call out here tonight. I don't know you, but they were all here, whoever brought you here. I want to see you sitting right here in the meeting.
Bill, that is Isabella Duran, my daughter.
I thank you for bringing her because we need future leaders, and it's an inspiration to see you here tonight. So, I expect to see you sitting here shortly, arguing with you. So, but that's the reason. As I mentioned when I started, I've got a 20-year-old, I've got a 17-year-old, and I've got a 13-year-old. I don't know if they can stay here, and I'm concerned about it. They don't have to stay here, but I sure would like them to have the option. We are headed for some hard times. The market today fluctuated 1,400 points. It dropped 500 and then it went up 900. So I have a municipal background, 15 years of municipal experience and 20 years of business. I think you have a clear choice coming up, and I encourage you to vote for somebody that has business experience. It is going to be difficult times coming ahead. So with that, I encourage you to vote Bill McReynolds on November 8th, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here tonight.
All right, Spence, we're going to wrap it up again to Ventura Forward. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. It's been a privilege. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or check out the podcast on your Apple, Spotify, or other platforms. Have a great night, very much. Have a good election. Take care.
And do, but we're going to talk to them.